Schedule and the litany of good teams that there are in the ACC this year means that the Mustangs have to start fast to begin 2026.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SMU here on this Thursday edition. My name is Grayson Singleton. We are the #1 sports podcast network. That is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And we are going to get to the Mustangs and their required fast start here in just a second. Also coming up on the show today, Kevin Jennings versus CJ Carr. It'll be the best quarterback matchup that SMU is involved in all season long. And why this caught my eye, I'll tell you about that later on in the show. Plus, SMU's mission to keep the best in DFW is once again in for a big-time fight when it comes to a running back that I'm going to tell you I really like. So we're going to talk about that to close up the show. But first, let's start off with SMU and its schedule again. We've talked about this the last couple of days. We'll continue to talk about it. And those of you who have mentioned this in the YouTube comments are dead on the money that SMU must start fast. They haven't started out particularly great in the last couple of years. As a matter of fact, 2025 and 2024, both different seasons for different reasons, the Mustangs in Power 4 non-con games are 1-3. Now, that does not include conference championships, doesn't include postseason games. So, in 2024, those were games against BYU and TCU, which SMU split, lost to BYU, beat TCU 66-42. And then last year, obviously, their non-con Power 4 games, neither of them went SMU's way. Baylor beat them, and TCU beat them. So, SMU is 1-3 in Power 4 non-con games in its 2 seasons as a member of the ACC. Now, that has to be taken with a grain of salt because 2024, you did end up undergoing a quarterback switch. So we do have to provide that kind of context. But nevertheless, when it comes to non-conference Power 4 games to begin the season, the Mustangs, even if they do win them, it doesn't look all that great. And even if you zoom out just past Power 4 non-con games, the East Texas A&M game last year didn't look all that impressive. The Missouri State game did not look all that impressive in non-con. So the Mustangs need to start out better. And this year it's going to be that much more important because the Mustangs start off the season not really having a non-con schedule because they start the season off with Florida State and then 2 weeks later you're playing Louisville. So it's not a soft landing. And remember this, college football doesn't have a preseason. So any kind of warts that SMU undoubtedly is going to have, as will any other team, has to be ironed out quick, fast, and in a hurry. Because you've got to win those 2 games. If you lose those 2 games, you are in real trouble in the ACC with how good the rest of the conference is. Miami is the defending runner-ups. Georgia Tech should be good again. You got Clemson, who should not be that bad again. Hell, if you lose to Florida State, who knows what they could potentially end up being. So, just relative to the rest of the ACC, the Mustangs have to start out fast. But then there also is the rest of the schedule. And that October is going to look a lot sweeter if you can come into it undefeated. Right, that long stretch, I don't want to call it a layoff. That's disrespectful to the guys you're going to play against. But that long stretch of games where you're playing Missouri State, Boston College, Virginia, Cal, and then at Syracuse. That stretch is going to look a lot better if instead of fighting for your life in terms of your ability to backdoor your way into the college football playoff, it'll look a lot better when you go through the first 4 games unbeaten, and then, man, we got games that we will be favored in all of them, likely. And we just get to cement our resume rather than try to build and validate it and try to rebound off of a rough start. Like, to me, that's the difference in the mindset. And that's ultimately why SMU needs to start off hot. Like, they can't start off, going back to last year, right? They can't start off looking suspect and looking wildly undisciplined like they did against East Texas A&M. And then in the Baylor game, the kicking game cost them, and they also don't finish that game well defensively. And then Missouri State, sure, you won at 28-10, but ain't nobody coming out of that game thinking like this was a great team. And then TCU lose by 11 and give up 5 touchdowns. So last year, even at 2-2, nobody really felt all that great about the Mustangs. And sure, they played better football as the season went on. You got the road wins over Clemson, or the road win over Clemson. Miami came into town and you knocked them off. You beat the hell out of Louisville. So you played better football as the season went on. But there is pressure to win these games early on in the year. Your college football playoff life depends on it. Your hopes to get to the ACC championship game will certainly depend on it. And all of these things that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks ever since the season ended, with Rhett Lashlee's team needing to be more disciplined and the Mustangs needing to be better coming out in the first drive or two in games on offense. All those things will need to be ready and will have needed to be implemented before week 1. That cannot be something that you are given the luxury to gradually get better at as the season goes on. No, you got to be ready to go right out the gate. Right immediately from when we kick off on, September 7th is when the Mustangs September 7th, when the Mustangs kick off against Florida State. They got to be ready to go. They got to be buttoned up, and they got to be ready to put points on the board quickly, because there is no easing into this season. And you really make that October schedule look less like a part of the schedule where we expect you to win and we're feeling really good, and you make it look more as if, boy, they better win because one more loss and you're screwed in terms of the college football playoff or the ACC championship game. And really, I should have flipped those two because the ACC would come first. But with how good the ACC is, you don't want to fall behind early. And one of the disadvantageous parts of the schedule is that you're playing 2 ACC games in the first 3 weeks of the season. And by the way, within 12 days of each other as well. So, look, if you're Rhett Lashlee, you got to understand we got to hit the ground running and be ready to go. If you're the players, once you get into that mode of fall camp, you got to be locked in and ready to go, because there is no cushion. There is no, okay, we can iron out the kinks or iron out the wrinkles, untangle the kinks, and do it against an FCS team or a team that, is even, could be potentially even lower than that, right? Like that's not the case. It's not the case. You're going to Tallahassee to take on the Seminoles, and then you're taking on Louisville. You got to be ready. You have to be ready to go immediately. By the way, another reason you have to have your discipline buttoned up immediately, both of those games are on the road. So October's going to be great. October's a great schedule for SMU. But if they do not get their act together early, they're going on the road in a matter of 12 days to 2 ACC teams. It will not look pretty. And everything that you would hope that this SMU team could accomplish in the last year of Kevin Jennings at the helm probably goes down the drain if they cannot start out a lot better than they have in recent years. Again, 1-3 against non-conference Power 4 opponents in the last 2 years. It's got to change, and they've got to look better. All right, coming up next on Locked On SMU, Kevin Jennings and CJ Carr, big-time matchup when SMU takes on Notre Dame. Who's got the edge early, and why did this catch my eye? I'll tell you why on the other side, so keep it here on Locked On SMU.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, welcome back here to Locked On SMU. Appreciate you guys making us your first listen of the day, as always, here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Grayson Singleton. Hey, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new here. We would love to have you as a part of this everyday community, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, those of you listening on the podcast side, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, salute to you all as well. We're glad you are with us today. Okay, excuse me. When SMU plays Notre Dame, there's going to be a quarterback matchup between Kevin Jennings and CJ Carr. And this caught my eye earlier today because On Three's JD Piquel, and I know I saw the comment in the YouTube chat the other day, is that SMU fans hate On Three. Believe me, you're not the only fan base that hates On Three National. I cover another team whose fan base doesn't really like it either. But nevertheless, they're really good for content and think pieces. And JD Piquel of On 3 has Notre Dame's CJ Carr as number 6 in his early top 10 quarterback projections. Now, clearly, that sets up the best quarterback matchup that SMU is slated to have this year, because if you look at the rest of the SMU schedule, it's not rife with great quarterback play. Syracuse, we don't really know who their quarterback's going to be. I guess Cal, with Sangapolatele, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be really good, especially if he cuts down on his turnovers. I think that's a guy that can be pretty good, but he probably is the second best quarterback that SMU is going to play this year. So it really is going to be, in terms of a quarterback storyline narrative, in terms of a battle, Notre Dame's the only one. And CJ Carr played well last year. I think he and Kevin Jennings, in terms of just their overall impact on the game, they're very similar if you look at it. Now, CJ Carr completed 2/3 of his passes. His touchdown-interception ratio was a lot better than Kevin Jennings was last year. But I do think that from an SMU perspective, this game kind of turns on whichever quarterback plays the best. Because we know Notre Dame's going to have a really good defense, and we don't know what the defense for SMU's is going to look like. So if you were going to compare each quarterback's challenge, and I know it's an apples to orange comparison, but right now you would say, okay, CJ Carr probably has the easier road to success against SMU than Kevin Jennings on Notre Dame. I think that's a reasonable thing to say right now. But that game will be determined by which guy's quarterback plays well. If SMU turns over CJ Carr and Kevin Jennings protects it, I'm willing to say that SMU can win the football game. And if CJ Carr plays clean football and Kevin Jennings turns the ball over a couple of times and makes one erratic play that kills a drive or whatnot, then I'm comfortable saying Notre Dame wins that football game. But this is the only game to me that it's going to come down to two top-of-the-line quarterbacks pitted up against each other, unless somebody else emerges for Florida State or Louisville or Syracuse or one of those teams. That to me this is the only one. And CJ Carr last year only turned the ball over 6 times, 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. And against ranked teams, he wasn't all that bad, except USC. But in the Miami and Texas A&M games, in those games combined, he completed 39 of 62 passes for over 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Now, of his 6 interceptions, all of them except one came against ranked teams. The only one that didn't come against a ranked team was their win over NC State. But ranked teams, which SMU very well could be at that potential point when those two teams will meet, could be ranked. So CJ Carr against really good teams has shown a propensity to turn the ball over at least once. But to me, here's what's going to have to happen. Which quarterback, Kevin or CJ, makes the game easier? And I know I'm breaking down a game that is months away. We are 10 months away from SMU taking on Notre Dame. But this is a game where efficiency is going to matter. And there's a lot of things that could come into play for either side here. Both quarterbacks completed 2/3 of their passes. One quarterback turned it over more than double the other. That would be Kevin Jennings. KJ was outpaced by Carr in the QBR department, likely because of the turnovers. But they both are similar in the fact that they were in run-pass option schemes and were both asked, not similarly, but in a comparable way, to be something that either elevated the offense or carried it. In the case of CJ Carr, he was to elevate because they had an excellent running game with Jeremiah Love. Kevin Jennings pretty much carried it with some assistance from the running game, so to speak. So when it comes to a quarterback matchup like that, where if you're SMU, you're going to be on the road in South Bend. The Irish are going to have a really good defense with a really good defensive-minded head coach and a good defensive coordinator. If Kevin Jennings can beat out CJ Carr in the efficiency department, keep himself out of third downs, keep himself out of precarious situations where he can be prone to turn the football over, then SMU gives itself a chance to spring the upset on the road in what could be some rather funky conditions, shall I say. Let's put it that way. But if Kevin does the opposite of what I just laid out, and CJ Carr can rely on a good run game that will have a different running back, but can rely on a good run game because Notre Dame always has great offensive linemen. If he relies on a run game and plays efficiently and doesn't turn the football over, then that goes in Notre Dame's favor. But if there's one game we're going to find out the most about Kevin Jennings, it would be that game. Best defense you're going to see all year, in my opinion. Best quarterback you're going to see all year, in my opinion. You're going to be on the road, probably the toughest road environment you'll see in the regular season. Either that or Tallahassee, depending on how they're feeling about that program. But that's the game we'll find out about Kevin Jennings. And it might be the only one that we have this conversation, which is why I want to get it on the radar now, is that, quite frankly, there ain't too many of these this year. There's just not. And is that excellent? I don't know. Is it? I mean, it clearly works in SMU's favor, but from a talking point perspective, Florida State's quarterback situation doesn't really excite me. Neither does Louisville's. Chandler Morris is gone for Virginia, so we'll see who that quarterback is. Cal, I think, would fall into this. And then you got Virginia Tech. We'll see who their quarterback is. Did Bo Prabula end up there? Somebody ended up at Virginia Tech, I remember. And then Wake Forest and Stanford are the other games. So it's kind of the only one. It's kind of the only one. And if you're Kevin Jennings, you have to relish, once you get there, you have to relish that opportunity to play in South Bend and to be going up against a guy who is as highly thought of as CJ Carr is, against a team like Notre Dame with a head coach like Marcus Freeman, who's already taken his team to the national championship and was close to potentially being a national champion. So, if you're Kevin, that's your game, your circle. That's the one game that you're saying, I got to go up and face him. I got to go toe-to-toe with CJ Carr in that defense. Again, Cal might fall into that category, but right now it's just that right there. And we'll see how it shakes out. But early on, when you're talking about a projected top 10 quarterback, top 15 quarterback in the country, it's kind of your only one with CJ Carr. All right, coming up next, one more segment to go here on Locked On SMU. When we come back, let's get some recruiting talk in here. There's a running back in the DFW area in the 2027 class that I really like. He's one of the best in the DFW, but it's going to be a fight to keep him, plus another running back that has also crossed into my radar during the last couple of days. We'll keep it here on Locked On SMU. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money is going each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Man, when you first set up your account with Rocket Money, you're going to be shocked by how many subscriptions that Rocket Money can show you that you're paying for. And you can just quickly get rid of them, cancel the subscriptions inside the app, and it'll start saving you money. So no more hunting down customer service numbers. Just cancel it right in the app. And you can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and even low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, final segment of the show. And before we get into it, want to make sure that we tell you about our Everydayer Club that gives you an ad-free version of this here show. That's right. You can get Locked On SMU ad-free, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So whether you're in the car, at the gym, or even just doing some chores around the house, you can listen to us with no ad interruptions. Plus, it also comes with an invite to a members-only Discord server. That's right, other everydayers within the Locked On podcast community hanging out on a Discord server, and some of our hosts as well. So it's $5 a month or $50 a year. Check the show notes or go to lockedonsmu.supercast.com to get started. Okay, here on Locked On SMU, we talk a little recruiting, so let's end the show with a little recruiting. And a guy that really has been on my radar now, going back into calendar year 2025, is a guy that is in DFW, and that is three-star running back, according to 247 Sports, SaRod Baker. Kyle Cooper did an in-home visit with him, the running backs coach, for SMU, and there hasn't been a whole lot of shift with SaRod Baker, the DeSoto product, who had just an outstanding playoff. If you follow high school football in the state of Texas, you will have been aware that SaRod Baker was just outstanding in the playoffs. He has long been considered a lean by rivals to TCU. TCU has long been considered the lead for him, but SMU is in there, as is Texas and as is Ohio State. Ohio State kind of lagging behind the other Texas schools, but that's been the reporting according to Sam Spiegelman and others as well. That's usually been the lead. Now, if you are one that uses the On3 rivals, you will notice that he has not received a ranking by rivals just yet, and they just haven't gotten around to it yet. That is going to be the only explanation for that, because that is something that happens with rivals quite a lot. But SaRod Baker is a guy who, to me, is just so fluid at doing whatever. You can line him up in the slot, obviously. He's a running back. But he is a dude that can make plays and has good size. Can make plays anywhere, man. Out in the slot, traditional running back, out of the backfield. He is a very good route runner for a guy who is a running back. He's a really good route runner. And he's just a natural carrier of the football. And you might be saying, well, what does that mean? Watch the film. Watch the film. He's just a natural mover in space and in tight spaces too. And it just makes him so electric with the football. And it's a guy that you would love to have as a useful piece for a Rhett Lashlee offense. They're moving, potentially, Derek McFall out to wide receiver this year. That's a guy that they would have converted from running back. And SaRod Baker kind of fits that type of a guy who, if you wanted to move him out to wide receiver, you could. Just a really good route runner, good hands, along with his abilities as a running back. So that's a guy that I'm really interested in. But again, that one's going to be a fight because TCU has long been considered the leader for SaRod Baker, and then you've got Texas and Ohio State in the picture as well. Lathan Whisenton is a guy that came up in my day job covering recruiting for Oklahoma, and he got an in-home visit from Oklahoma running backs coach DeMarco Murray. He also has garnered a lot of interest from SMU, and he did say that SMU stands out for him. Quote, getting an offer from SMU was exciting and a big deal. They've been making waves in the ACC, especially after reaching the playoffs. It feels like a program on the rise, and it has definitely caught my attention. Now, he is a Rivals 4-star running back who you should love as a prospect. 5'11", 175 pounds, looks like $1 million. Like, the body is going to be Power 4 college football ready by the time that he steps into a college football facility. Midway High School in Waco is where he's from. And he's a guy that also has a strong offer sheet. Texas Tech, Michigan involved with him as well. 128th overall prospect in the class of 2027. Number 11 running back and number 18 in Texas as well. So, all in all, with those two guys that I have really come to like over the last couple of months, SMU is involved in. And obviously, you're going to want to take one or two after you got two really good ones in the 2026 class with Christian Rhodes and E.J. Kelly. But it's going to be a fight. And it always was going to be a fight with a mission like this, trying to keep the best players in DFW right here in the Metroplex. Because that's just what it's going to require when you've got really good players playing in the state of Texas. But if you're SMU, that's another reason why the start to the season is going to be so vital, is if you can get these guys into a game day visit in October after you've started off 4-0, that's going to hit a lot different than if you're 2-2 or 3-1 and you feel like your postseason hopes are on life support. So it is vital that they start out 4-0. And by the way, if you start out 4-0, that would have grabbed the interest of everybody that watches college football because you would have had road wins over Florida State and Louisville. And that's going to speak a lot to recruits. And if you look more disciplined in the process. And if it looks like as the team continues to grow, the coach has grown and gotten better as well. All of those things will come into play when it comes time for game day visit season. So, as long as those recruitments, SaRod Baker and Lathan Whisenton, can progress into the football season and get through OV season without those guys making a decision that is not in your favor, then you will have a shot if you can get through that first stretch of games in a really good spot. But it's going to be a fight to keep those guys in DFW, but so was that mission. And they've done pretty decent with it so far, and they've expanded the reach. But to continue to keep those guys in DFW, you're going to be fighting with the big boys from here on out. And they've already done well doing so, fending off schools like Ohio State and Penn State for Drew Evers, like Oklahoma and Miami for Alger Miles and Zach Turner. So they've already done well so far, but you got to keep it up, and it's going to continue to be a fight. All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU here on a Thursday. Remember, by the way, coming up in tomorrow's episode, Dalton Pence, Locked On Louisville, will join me, and we'll talk basketball for the entire show. We'll talk SMU and Louisville as those teams prepare, to take on each other on Saturday afternoon. Want to tell you about our Everydayer Club once again. If you never miss an episode, make sure you join the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year. You will get access to an ad-free version of this show, plus members-only Discord access. That gives you access to other Locked On Everydayers and our hosts as well. So make sure you tap in at the link in the show notes or lockedonsmu.supercast.com to learn more. All right, that'll do it for our show. Dalton Pence tomorrow joining me to close out the week. Take it easy, everybody.